What if I told you that the most complex book in human history is actually telling one simple story? A story so powerful it's captivated billions of people for thousands of years. Today, I want to tell you that story. Our story doesn't start with a big bang or random chaos. It starts with a mind, someone who's about to create the most beautiful thing you've ever imagined. Picture this: absolute darkness, complete nothingness. And then, with just words, no tools, no materials, just words, God speaks everything into existence. Mountains explode upward from nothing. Oceans rush to fill massive basins that didn't exist a second before. And light cuts through darkness for the very first time. But here's where it gets personal. Right at the center of this cosmic masterpiece, God plants a garden. Not a wilderness, not a jungle, a garden, Eden, in this place. It's like nothing you've ever seen. Flowers and colors that don't even exist anymore. Rivers that sound like music. Animals that have never known fear or hunger. Now you might think the crown jewel of creation would be those towering mountains or endless oceans. But you'd be wrong. The masterpiece, it was us. Human beings, made in God's own image. In Hebrew, we're called Adam, which literally means humanity. And here's what's incredible. God doesn't make us servants or pets. He makes us partners. Our job is to take this paradise and expand it, to create even more beauty. Let's be God's representatives on earth. Think about that for a second. The God who spoke galaxies into existence wanted us as partners, but every paradise has a test. In the center of Eden stood one tree with the longest name in history, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And this tree represented the most important choice humans would ever face. God laid out the choice simply. You can trust me to define good and evil, and find real freedom through partnership with me. Or you can take that knowledge for yourselves. But here's the warning. Choosing to go it alone will destroy you. Seems like an easy choice, right? But then a voice slithers into the conversation. The serpent had a different sales pitch. Take control of your destiny, the serpent whispered. Eat the fruit. You'll become like God, able to decide for yourself what's right and wrong. Real freedom means you don't need anyone telling you what to do, and they bought it. They chose independence. What happened next was like watching dominoes fall in slow motion. First, the marriage fell apart. Blame, suspicion, shame. Then they started hiding from God like children who broke something valuable. Work became exhausting. Pain invaded childbirth. And for the first time in history, death knocked on humanity's door. Here's the cruel irony. In trying to become more like God, they became less human than ever before. And this pattern spread like a virus. Brother killed brother. Violence became normal. Eventually, an entire civilization called Babylon emerged that had completely flipped the script, calling evil good and good evil. The corruption was so complete that God had to hit the reset button on human civilization. But a new beginning knocked at the door. It's a new beginning through Abraham, but God wasn't giving up on humanity. From the ashes of Babylon, he started over with two people, Abraham and Sarah, and he made them a promise that would change everything. I'm going to make your family into a great nation, God told them, and through your descendants. I'm going to bless every family on earth. You too are going to be the starting point for humanity's comeback story. Now, this wasn't just about making one family successful. God had a bigger plan. Abraham and Sarah's descendants would become a model nation, showing the entire world what it looks like when people actually choose to trust God's way instead of their own. If they could pull this off, they'd create a pathway back to paradise for everyone. The rest of the Bible? It's the story of whether they succeeded. We watch them become slaves in Egypt, then witness one of history's greatest prison breaks, the Exodus. After wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, God gives them something incredible, detailed instructions for how to actually live well. Not a bunch of random rules, but a blueprint for human flourishing. But here's where your heart breaks. Despite having God's personal guidance, despite seeing miracles with their own eyes, despite having divine wisdom handed to them on a silver platter, Israel makes the same choice their ancestors made in Eden. They decided they knew better than God what was right and wrong. Even their greatest kings, David, who killed giants, Solomon, the wisest man alive, eventually fell into the same trap. Instead of using their God-given power to serve others, they built their own empires, accumulated massive wealth, and chased their own version of success. Sound familiar? Israel's prophets saw where this was heading and started sounding the alarm. This path leads straight back to Babylon. You're going to become exiles in foreign lands, prisoners in the very empire your ancestors escaped from. And the prophets were right. Israel was conquered, scattered, exiled, which raises the haunting question that drives the rest of the story. If even God's chosen people could undo this with miracles, with direct guidance, with everything handed to them, then who possibly can?
Oh.
But the prophets refused to let the story end there.
Oh.
A new kind of leader from Israel's royal bloodline, who would be different from everyone who came before. This promised leader wouldn't just succeed where everyone else failed. He would actually change people from the inside out, transforming their hearts and minds so they could finally make the right choices. The Old Testament ends with these promises hanging in the air like a held breath. 400 years of silence. Waiting, a new chapter begins. Then, in a tiny insignificant town called Nazareth, a child is born who will claim to be the answer to every promise ever made. Jesus of Nazareth doesn't just teach about God, he claims to be God, wrapped in human skin. The long-awaited leader who will succeed where literally everyone else in history has failed. Remember that serpent voice from the garden? It comes for Jesus too. Same temptations, same lies, same promises. But this time someone says no. Power, pleasure, independence, everything the serpent offered in Eden, he offers to Jesus. And for the first time in human history, someone chooses partnership with God instead. Jesus' teachings flip everything upside down. Want real power? Serve others. Want true wealth? Give it away. Want to show real strength? Love your enemies. The people who will actually rule the world, those who humble themselves to lift others up. If you came expecting a conventional king with armies and palaces, this was confusing. But if you had eyes to see it, it was breathtakingly beautiful. Then Jesus drops the most shocking claim in human history. He didn't come just to teach us the right way to live. He came to be for us what we could never be for ourselves. Here's the problem. Every single person who has ever lived has chosen independence over partnership with God at some point. All of us. The consequence. Spiritual death. Separation from the source of life itself. And that infection has spread to every human being. So Jesus does the unthinkable. He voluntarily takes the full weight of humanity's rebellion into himself. On a Roman cross, the most brutal execution method ever invented, he experiences what it means to be completely cut off from God. But here's what evil didn't see coming. Love turned out to be more powerful than hate, life more enduring than death. 3 days later, Jesus walks out of his own tomb, proving that God's love and power are ultimately victorious over every force that seeks to destroy human flourishing. A new choice, a new tree. Now humanity faces a new choice. There's a new tree in the story, the cross where Jesus died. And the question is simple. Will you continue the old way of being human, building your own kingdom, and defining your own truth? Or will you step into this completely new way of being human that Jesus just opened up? Here's what happens to people who choose to follow Jesus. They discover not doing this in their own strength anymore. They're powered by God himself. When you truly grasp that you're deeply loved and completely forgiven by God, something incredible happens. You become someone who can actually love and forgive others. The cycle of revenge and self-protection gets broken. And the Jesus movement explodes across the ancient world like wildfire. Everywhere you look, new communities are forming. Groups of people committed to actually living Jesus' radical way of love, service, and sacrifice. These early Christians turned the world upside down, but not how you'd expect. No armies, no political schemes, no violence. Just the simple, revolutionary power of lives transformed by divine love. But let's be honest. Following Jesus turns out to be incredibly challenging. These communities face brutal persecution from the outside. Powerful people feel threatened by a movement that actually values the poor and marginalized. And inside, they're dealing with confusion, conflict, and the constant temptation to water down their radical calling to make it more comfortable. So the apostles start writing letters, part encouragement, part challenge, to these struggling communities. Those letters are preserved in the New Testament, and they refull of practical wisdom for living the Jesus way in a world that often hates it. The Bible doesn't end with the end. It ends with a promise. The writers envision a future day when Jesus returns to finish what he started. Every wrong made right, every evil destroyed. Heaven and earth finally united in perfect harmony. In this restored world, humanity finally gets to do what we were created for in the first place, ruling the earth together in God's love and power. Eden's garden paradise becomes a garden city, where divine and human creativity work together to create endless beauty and flourishing. The story that started in a garden ends in a city, but a city unlike any we've ever seen. Conclusion: one story, many voices. This is the grand story that connects all 66 books of the Bible. From the very first moment of creation to the ultimate restoration of everything, at its core, it's a story about one choice: independence or partnership with God. It's played out across thousands of years and billions of individual lives. What makes this story even more incredible? It's told through dozens of completely different styles. Epic poetry, intimate songs, historical chronicles, prophetic visions, personal letters, symbolic imagery. Each book adds its unique voice to one unified symphony, like 66 different instruments in an orchestra, all playing variations on the same magnificent theme. The Bible isn't just a religious book, it's humanity's greatest story, addressing our deepest questions about purpose, meaning, love, justice, and hope. And it's a story that's still transforming lives today, just like it has for thousands of years, including maybe yours.